The silent approach. The alarm systems at Deep Space Monitoring Station Olympus had been silent for 3 decades. Commander James Mitchell had spent 15 years watching empty screens, tracking asteroids, and cataloging distant stars. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever changed. Until the morning of March 14, 2187. Mitchell was reviewing routine reports when Specialist Rachel Torres burst into his office without knocking. Her face was pale, and her hands shook as she held her tablet. "Commander," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "You need to see this." "No." Mitchell followed her to the main observation deck. The room was filled with 70 technicians, all staring at the central display screen in complete silence. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Something massive was approaching Earth. The object measured nearly 5 kilometers in diameter, roughly spherical, with a surface that seemed to shimmer and shift like liquid metal. It had appeared at the edge of the solar system just 8 hours ago and was moving steadily toward Earth at a speed that defied conventional physics. "How long until it reaches us?" Mitchell asked quietly. 42 hours at current velocity," Torres replied. "It's not slowing down. It's not changing course. And Commander, it's not responding to any of our hails." Mitchell stared at the object. In all his years of service, through all the simulations and training exercises, he had imagined first contact 1,000 different ways. But never like this. Never something so large, so silent, so utterly incomprehensible. "Get me Director Chin at Earth Defense Command," he said. "And activate Protocol 7. This just became everyone's problem. Within 6 hours, every military installation on Earth and in orbit had gone to high alert. Ships that had been conducting routine patrols in the asteroid belt turned and burned toward home at maximum acceleration. Weapons platforms that had never been fired outside of testing powered up their systems. Fighter pilots climbed into cockpits, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. Humanity had waited 200 years for this moment. First contact with an alien species. But something felt wrong. Director Catherine Chin convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Holographic representatives from every major nation materialized around the conference table, their faces grim. The alien object dominated the display at the center of the room, slowly rotating, its surface catching light in ways that seemed impossible. "We have 24 hours before that thing enters Earth's orbit," Chin said. "We need to decide what we're going to do." Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief xenobiologist and head of the First Contact Initiative, stood up. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were sharp behind her glasses. "We cannot assume hostile intent," she said firmly. "This object has made no aggressive moves. It has not fired any weapons. It has not even attempted to approach our defensive perimeter. We should continue communication attempts." General Robert Harrison, commander of the Orbital Defense Fleet, shook his head. "Doctor, with respect, that thing is the size of a small city. If it's hostile and we wait too long to act, we might not get another chance. My job is to protect Earth. Right now, that object is a threat until proven otherwise." The debate raged for hours. Scientists argued for patience and careful observation. Military commanders demanded immediate action. Politicians worried about public panic. The world below watched and waited, eyes turned toward the sky. News networks broadcast constant updates. Some people prayed. Others prepared for the worst. Everyone understood that humanity stood at a crossroads. Mitchell watched from Olympus Station as Dr. Vasquez made one final attempt at communication. She had assembled a team of linguists, mathematicians, and artists to create a message that transcended language. Mathematical sequences, chemical formulas, images of Earth and its people, music from every culture. They broadcasted on every frequency imaginable. The response was silence. The alien object simply continued its approach, unchanging, unresponsive, unknowable. "I don't understand," Vasquez said, her frustration evident. "Why won't they answer?" "Maybe they can't," Torres suggested quietly. "Or maybe they don't think they need to. What if their intentions are so obvious to them that they don't realize we're confused?" Time ran out. The object entered the orbit of Mars. Earth's defense fleet moved into position, forming a wall of steel and firepower between the alien structure and their home planet. Admiral Lisa Park commanded the fleet from her flagship, the EDS Defiant. She had fought in the resource wars 30 years ago. She had lost friends and family. She knew the cost of hesitation and she knew the price of wrong decisions. But she had her orders. Dr. Vasquez made one last plea. "Give me 6 more hours," she begged Chin. "Just 6 hours to establish communication. We're so close. I can feel it." But Chin had pressures of her own. The governments of Earth demanded action. The public wanted protection. And every simulation suggested that waiting too long could be catastrophic. The order came at 0400 hours on March 16th. Admiral Park read it 3 times before accepting it. She closed her eyes and thought about her daughter, who was 7 years old and dreamed of meeting aliens someday. Then she opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Park. Prepare to engage the target. Fire on my command. The human fleet consisted of 147 warships, the accumulated might of Earth's military forces. They had missiles that could destroy asteroids, energy weapons that could cut through steel like paper, and electromagnetic pulse devices that could disable any electronic system. They had been built to protect humanity from any threat. Now they would be tested. Mitchell watched from Olympus as the fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked through space, leaving brilliant trails. Energy beams carved lines of light through the darkness. The electromagnetic pulse weapons discharged in waves of invisible force. The alien object was hit by everything humanity could throw at it. And for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the structure began to break apart. Not exploding, not burning, but simply coming apart like a flower losing its petals. Pieces separated and drifted away, each one still shimmering with that strange liquid metal appearance. The human fleet pressed the attack, targeting each piece, destroying them one by one. It took 3 hours to reduce the entire structure to debris. When it was over, silence filled the command channels. No one cheered. No one celebrated. Something about the way the object had died felt wrong. It had not fought back. It had not tried to defend itself. It had simply accepted destruction like a lamb going to slaughter. What? Mitchell whispered. Why didn't it fight? Admiral Park ordered recovery teams to collect samples from the debris field. Specialized ships moved through the wreckage, gathering pieces of the alien structure for analysis. What they found would change everything. The first piece retrieved looked like metal but felt warm to the touch, almost alive. When scientists examined it under microscopes, they discovered something impossible. The material was organic and technological at the same time, a fusion of biology and machinery that should not exist. Dr. Vasquez led the analysis team. She had not slept since the attack, driven by a terrible suspicion that grew stronger with each discovery. The pieces of the alien structure contained data storage systems unlike anything human technology had produced. They were still functional despite the damage. And they contained information. So much information. It took 18 hours to develop a way to access the data. When they finally succeeded, the first images that appeared on the screens made Vasquez gasp. She saw a planet, beautiful and green with oceans and continents. She saw cities built from the same shimmering material as the destroyed structure. She saw people, if they could be called that, tall and graceful with skin that seemed to glow faintly. She saw children playing in parks that floated in the sky. Keep going, she whispered. Show me everything. The data revealed more. Star charts showing a journey of 300 years. Technical specifications for the structure, which was not a weapon or a warship. It was a seed ship, designed to travel between stars and establish new ecosystems. The alien species, who called themselves the Karathos, had sent it to Earth as a gift. A gift. The word echoed in Vasquez's mind. She kept digging through the data, her hands shaking. She found records of the Karathos civilization, thousands of years old, spread across dozens of star systems. They were explorers and gardeners, species that found barren worlds and brought them to life. They had detected Earth's radio signals 2 centuries ago. They had studied humanity from afar. And they had decided that Earth's ecosystem was dying, poisoned by pollution and climate change. The seed ship was their answer. It contained genetic templates for millions of species, both Earth native and alien. It carried terraforming technology that could heal damaged ecosystems without harming existing life. It held blueprints for sustainable cities, clean energy systems, and medical treatments that could cure diseases humanity had fought for generations. The Karathos had spent 300 years preparing this gift, crossing the vast darkness between stars to offer it freely. But there was more. The data contained a message recorded by the ship's architect, a Karathos named Mirathal. Her image appeared on the screen, and even through the alien features, Vasquez could see kindness in her eyes. People of Earth, the translation software rendered her words. We have watched you from afar and seen your struggles. We have seen your wars and your pollution. We have seen your planet dying. But we have also seen your art, your music, your determination to survive. We believe you are worth saving. The message continued. We send you this gift with no expectations of payment or alliance. We ask nothing in return. We simply wish to help because we can, and because we believe the universe is better when species help each other rather than destroy each other. Inside this vessel, you will find everything you need to heal your world. Use it wisely. Use it well. And perhaps someday when you travel to the stars yourselves, you will offer the same kindness to another species in need. The message ended. Dr. Vasquez sat in silence, staring at the screen. Around her, her team members were crying. They understood what they had done. Humanity had just destroyed the greatest gift it would ever receive. And they had killed the people who brought it out of fear and paranoia. The celebration that had begun on Earth when the alien structure was destroyed suddenly felt obscene. Mitchell received the report from Vasquez and felt his soul break. He thought about all the times he had dreamed of first contact, imagining brave speeches and cultural exchanges. He had never imagined this. He had never imagined that humanity's first act upon meeting another species would be murder. The weight of it crushed him. Director Chen called another emergency session of the Global Defense Council. This time no one argued. No one defended the decision to fire. They simply sat and stared at the evidence of their mistake. The Karathos had come in peace. They had offered salvation. And humanity had answered with violence. General Harrison, who had pushed hardest for military action, resigned his commission that same day. He could not live with what he had done. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. The celebration turned to mourning. People who had cheered in the streets now wept. The monuments that had been planned to honor the victory were cancelled. Instead, humanity began to understand the true cost of its fear. They had not defended themselves. They had committed an act of cosmic tragedy. The truth unveiled to the world changed overnight. What had been celebrated as humanity's greatest victory became its deepest shame. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before the United Nations General Assembly, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. On the massive screen behind her, images from the Karathos data archives played in an endless loop. Cities of light, children learning in floating gardens, scientists working together across species barriers. Every image was a reminder of what humanity had destroyed. That we need to understand the full scope of what we've lost, Vasquez said. The seed ship wasn't just carrying biological templates and technology. It was carrying the culmination of Karathos' wisdom accumulated over 50,000 years. Medical treatments that could have eliminated cancer, heart disease, and neurological disorders within a generation. Energy systems that could have ended our dependence on fossil fuels immediately. Agricultural techniques that could have fed 10 billion people without depleting the soil. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the assembly. But more than that, we lost something irreplaceable. We lost the friendship of a species that looked at us, saw our flaws and our potential, and chose to help us anyway. The Karathos believed in us when we didn't believe in ourselves. And we killed them for it. Commander James Mitchell watched the broadcast from Olympus Station. His team had been working around the clock to recover more data from the debris field. Each new discovery made the tragedy deeper. They had found personal logs from Karathos crew members who had volunteered for the 300-year journey. Scientists who had put themselves in suspended animation, giving up everything they knew, everyone they loved, for the chance to help a species they had never met. One log entry particularly haunted Mitchell. It was from a young Karathos engineer named Kelvorn, written just before the ship entered Earth's solar system. He described his excitement at finally reaching their destination. He talked about the gardens he planned to help Earth build, the children he hoped to teach, the future he imagined for both species working together. The log ended with a simple statement: "Tomorrow we wake them. Tomorrow we meet the humans. I have dreamed of this moment my entire life." Kelvorn never got his tomorrow. He died when human missiles tore through the seed ship's hull, probably never understanding why the species he had traveled 3 centuries to help was killing him. Mitchell had to stop reading. He closed the file and sat in darkness, feeling the weight of collective guilt crushing down on him. Dr. Vasquez's team continued their analysis. They discovered that the seed ship had been transmitting constantly during its approach, just not on frequencies humanity normally monitored. The Karathos had been broadcasting their intentions, their gifts, their hopes for peaceful contact. But human receivers were tuned to different wavelengths. It was like someone shouting a greeting while everyone else had their fingers in their ears. The transmission, when finally decoded and translated, was heartbreaking in its simplicity. "We come as friends. We bring healing. Please prepare to receive our gifts. We mean no harm. We wish only to help." The message had repeated every 30 seconds for the entire 42 hours of the ship's approach. Humanity had simply never heard it. Specialist Rachel Torres made another discovery that shook the research team. Deep within the seed ship's data archives, she found profiles of Earth. The Karathos had been studying humanity for over 200 years, ever since detecting the first radio broadcasts. They had catalogs of human art, literature, music, and scientific achievements. They had analyzed human behavior, culture, and psychology. And their conclusion was documented in a report written by Mirathal herself. Torres read the report aloud to the assembled team. Humanity is young and violent, yes. They make mistakes. They hurt each other. They damage their world. But they also create beauty. They write poetry about stars they cannot reach. They make music that expresses emotions they cannot speak. They sacrifice themselves for strangers. They never give up, even when survival seems impossible. These are people worth saving. These are people who, given time and help, will become something extraordinary. The room fell silent. The Karathos had seen humanity's flaws clearly. They had known about the wars, the pollution, the cruelty. And they had chosen to help anyway. They had believed in humanity's potential more than humanity believed in itself. Dr. Vasquez felt tears streaming down her face. She made no attempt to wipe them away. Director Catherine Chin faced the hardest decision of her career. She called a closed meeting with the remaining members of the Global Defense Council. The question before them was simple but terrible. What do we do now? How do we make this right? General Lisa Park, who had given the order to fire, spoke first. Her voice was hollow, emptied of everything except pain. We need to find them, Park said. The Karathos' homeworld. We need to go there and explain what happened. We need to apologize. But how do we apologize for this? How do we say sorry for destroying 3 centuries of effort, for killing people who only wanted to help us, for proving every terrible thing the universe might think about humanity? Chin nodded slowly. We can't make this right. Nothing we do will bring back the Karathos who died. Nothing we say will undo what we've done. But we have to try. We have to show them and ourselves that we're more than our worst mistake. We have to prove that Mirathal was right to believe in us. The decision was made. Earth would mount an expedition to find the Karathos' homeworld. They would carry the recovered data from the seed ship, evidence of what happened, and a message of apology from all of humanity. It would take years to prepare. The journey itself might take decades with current human technology. But it had to be done. Dr. Vasquez was chosen to lead the scientific team. Mitchell volunteered to command the expedition ship. Park insisted on going as well, saying she had to face the consequences of her order personally. Thousands of others volunteered. Everyone wanted a chance at redemption. In the end, a crew of 300 was selected, the best and brightest humanity had to offer. While preparations began, humanity started implementing the Karathos gifts that could be salvaged from the debris. The medical treatments alone saved millions of lives in the first year. The clean energy technology began reversing climate change. The agricultural techniques ended famine in regions that had starved for generations. Every life saved, every improvement made, was a reminder of what the Karathos had tried to give freely and what humanity had almost destroyed. Mitchell stood in the construction bay watching the expedition ship take shape. They had named it the Myra's Hope, after the Karathos architect who had designed the seed ship. It was humanity's most advanced vessel, built with both human technology and the Karathos systems they had managed to salvage and understand. It would carry humanity's message across the stars. The ship took 3 years to build. During that time the world transformed. The shame of what had happened drove humanity to become better. War became unthinkable. How could nations fight each other when they had just committed genocide against peaceful aliens? Environmental destruction stopped. How could humanity continue poisoning its world when another species had died trying to save it? Inequality decreased. How could the rich hoard resources when the Karathos had offered everything freely? Dr. Vasquez spent those years preparing the message humanity would deliver. It couldn't just be words. It had to be proof that humanity had learned, had changed, had become worthy of the gift they had destroyed. She compiled records of everything humanity had accomplished using Karathos technology. Medical breakthroughs, environmental healing, social reforms. She included art created in honor of the fallen Karathos, music composed to express grief and hope, literature exploring the tragedy and its lessons. The day came for departure. Half the planet watched as the Myra's Hope launched from Earth orbit. Mitchell stood on the bridge, feeling the weight of humanity's hopes and guilt pressing down on him. Beside him, Dr. Vasquez held a small crystal device recovered from the seed ship. It contained the personal effects of the Karathos crew, items they had carried across 3 centuries. She would return them to their families if any still lived. The journey took 23 years. The crew spent most of it in suspended animation, waking periodically to check systems and study the Karathos data. They learned the language, the culture, the history. They came to know the people they had killed. Kelvorn, who had dreamed of building gardens. Mirathal, who had believed in humanity's potential. Dozens of others, each with their own stories, their own hopes, their own families waiting for them to return. When they finally arrived at the Karathos homeworld, Mitchell's heart nearly stopped. The planet was beautiful beyond description. Cities of living crystal grew from the ground like trees. Gardens floated in the sky, connected by bridges of light. And everywhere there were monuments. Statues of the seed ship. Gardens planted in honor of the dead. Memorial walls with thousands of names carved in glowing script. The Karathos already knew what had happened. They had sent another ship to investigate when the seed ship stopped transmitting. They had recovered their own data. They had seen the recordings of the attack. And they had been waiting. When the Myra's Hope requested permission to land, the response came immediately. One word in both Karathos and English: welcome. Dr. Vasquez led the delegation that descended to the surface. She carried the crystal device with the personal effects. She carried the compiled records of humanity's changes. She carried a message signed by every living human, billions of names expressing sorrow and commitment to be better. And she carried her own guilt, the knowledge that she could have tried harder to stop the attack, could have fought longer for patience. They were met by a Karathos elder named Thonmira, the mother of Mirathal. She stood in a garden of memorial flowers, each one representing a life lost on the seed ship. Her skin had the faint glow all Karathos shared, but her eyes held depths of sorrow that transcended species. Dr. Vasquez approached her, knelt, and offered the crystal device. "I'm so sorry," Vasquez said, her voice breaking. "We were afraid. We didn't understand. We made a terrible mistake. Your daughter believed in us and we killed her for it. I don't know how to make this right. I don't know if it can ever be right. But we want to try. We need to try." Thonmira took the crystal device. She held it to her chest for a long moment. Then she spoke, her words translated by the devices both species now shared. "My daughter knew the risks. We all knew. Young species are dangerous because they are afraid. Fear makes people cruel. But Mira believed that fear could be overcome. She believed that any species capable of creating beauty was capable of choosing kindness." The elder gestured to the memorial garden around them. "We mourned. We grieved. We questioned whether Mira was wrong to trust you. But then your messages began arriving. We saw what you did with the gifts you salvaged. We saw how you changed. We saw you become the people Mira believed you could be." The Karathos paused, and something that might have been a smile crossed her alien features. "She was right about you. You made a terrible mistake, yes. You caused great pain. But you did not hide from it. You did not excuse it. You faced what you had done and chose to become better. That takes courage." Over the following weeks, humanity's delegation met with Karathos leaders, scientists, and families of the dead. They shared stories. They shared grief. They shared hope. And slowly, impossibly, they began to build the friendship that should have begun 23 years earlier. The Karathos agreed to send another seed ship to Earth, this one with a crew that knew what to expect and how to communicate properly. But more than that, they offered humanity something else. A place in the greater galactic community. The Karathos were part of a coalition of species that helped younger civilizations. They invited humanity to join, not as recipients of aid but as partners. "You have learned the hardest lesson," Thonmira explained. "You have learned what it costs to act from fear rather than hope. Now teach others. Help us guide young species away from the mistakes you made." Mitchell stood in the memorial garden on their last day on the Karathos homeworld. He placed his hand on a monument bearing Kelvorn's name. The young engineer who had dreamed of building gardens with humans would never see that dream fulfilled. But Mitchell made a promise to him anyway. "We'll build those gardens," he whispered. "We'll teach others to build them too. We'll make sure your death meant something." The Myra's Hope returned to Earth carrying Karathos ambassadors and a new seed ship. This time, when the alien vessel approached Earth, humanity was ready. Not with weapons but with welcome. Not with fear but with hope. The skies filled with lights as cities worldwide celebrated. Not a victory this time, but a beginning. Dr. Vasquez stood with Thonmira on the observation deck of the seed ship, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. The Karathos elder placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "My daughter would be happy to see this," she said. "She would say that humanity's story is proof that mistakes do not define us. What defines us is what we do after the mistake. How we grow. How we change. How we choose to be better." Years passed. Earth bloomed under Karathos' guidance. The gardens Kelvorn had dreamed of floated above every major city. Humanity spread to the stars, not as conquerors but as helpers. They found young species making the same mistakes, driven by the same fears, and they shared their story. They showed their scars. They admitted their shame. And they offered help, asking nothing in return, just as the Karathos had done for them. Commander Mitchell, now an old man, returned to the Karathos homeworld one final time. He walked through the memorial garden with Thonmira, who had become his friend across the decades. The monument to the seed ship crew had been expanded. Now it included a second section showing images of humans and Karathos working together, building, creating, and healing. This is the true memorial, Thonmira said. Not the stone or the names, but what came after. My daughter and her crew did not die for nothing. They died so humanity could learn. And humanity learned so well that now you teach others. The pain had purpose. The sacrifice mattered. Mitchell nodded, tears streaming down his weathered face. He thought about that terrible day when humanity had fired on the seed ship. He thought about all the years of guilt and work and change. He thought about the gardens floating above Earth, the lives saved by Karathos medicine, the young species humanity had helped guide away from fear toward hope. The cost had been terrible. The price had been paid in innocent blood. But humanity had made something meaningful from the tragedy. As the sun set over the memorial garden, Mitchell made a final promise to the dead. We'll never forget what we did. We'll never stop trying to be worthy of your sacrifice. And we'll never, ever let fear make us cruel again. The Karathos had believed in humanity when humanity didn't believe in itself. And humanity had finally, painfully, become the species they had believed it could be. The galaxy was better for it. The universe was better for it. And somewhere among the stars, perhaps the spirits of Mirathal and Calvorn and all the others smiled, knowing their dream had come true after all. Just not the way they had imagined. But perhaps in the end even better than they had hoped.